kind of buffet.
Welcome everybody to Ideas Outlook and Beyond. We are live. Happy New Year. And
Happy New Year.
I would like to welcome you back again. Mighty Heiser.
Good to see you, Ivan.
Matt Grimes. Paul Trippy.
Ivan?
Happy New Year.
Sort
You
of
as well?
miss our Christmas tree. I guess that just goes out with the season.
Did you guys have a good Christmas?
Very good.
Good New Year.
Thank you. Yes, and we would also like to say a moment of silence for our 38th President of the United States, Gerald Ford.
Thank you.
Paul and I attended the wake at separate times down in Washington in the Capitol Rotunda, and it was a very somber occasion. As always, we know how to take care of our leaders when they pass on, and I think that was a very good occasion. A couple of his grandchildren happened to be by the casket when I was there, so.
Great. Great. Would you like to see?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. You know, it was happenstance. I happened to be in D.C. for the weekend, but I was there Saturday evening and saw the hearse and the motorcade come by, and I was staying up not too far away and heard the 21 gun salute, and it was an impressive event, if you want to call it that, but it was something that was you know, actually nice to see. Matt's right. We do right by our leaders when they do pass and hold true to their wishes, and it was appropriate what we did for Gerald Ford, for the man he was, and the legacy he leaves.
Well, thank you very much for representing Connecticut in Washington, D.C.
Oh, and our governor was there, I believe, at the National Cathedral ceremony, as well as Congressman Shays and Senators Dodd and Lieberman, so both parties.
Well, what I would like the public to know, today's topic is Jody Rail's priorities for 2007. Okay, we're going to be discussing that because this is a very big issue for the state of Connecticut. Before I start, I would like for those of you who participated in the different events this week in Hartford to just give us a little overview of what you saw and your take on the legislatures. Now, hold on for a second. You went to the inaugural
I was at the ball. Yes.
Talk about that, please.
It was a very spectacular event with all the regalia, all the different members of the government were there. There was the Connecticut State Horse Guard in their uniforms, which was very impressive. And I think a good time was had by all. I was a guest of Representative John Fry. And it was very much a bipartisan event, Democrats and Republicans all enjoying each other in a social engagement. And it was a very good time, very memorable.
I saw her picture. She was very beautiful.
Yeah.
Very beautiful that night.
Yeah, well, she seemed to be enjoying herself. Has a gorgeous extended family, and they all came parading down a red carpet in the middle, and they were announced, and it was very impressive. Very impressive. Dressed Marine guards flanked the red carpet. It was an impressive night.
Good. Now, you went to the first day session, right?
Not the first day session. That happened actually a little earlier yesterday. I was at the swearing-in. I saw the parade come in at the Legislative Office building, and then I was at the actual inauguration. Brookfield probably would have had a bigger contingency at the gala, except some last-minute scheduling and everything. And you know, it was almost.
Tickets arrived.
Well,
He couldn't attend. Just say that.
No. It's not that at all. But the part of the thing is that there was a comment that was made. It was a criticism made actually on the radio this morning, which was that there was such effort to do it different than it was done 8 years ago, which is the last time we had it, because we didn't have it 4 years ago because of the state budget crisis. There was so much of an effort to do the gala differently than it was 8 years ago that it lost its authenticity in some capacity. But that's a topic for another day. The inauguration, very, very good. The Legislative Office building, I think, is one of the gems of Hartford in modern times. Many of the buildings are a lot older. Many of the buildings were built 200 years before any of us were even born. But this Legislative Office building is about 10, 15 years old now. Got 5 floors, magnificent atrium where she came out in the center stage and took the oath of office along with the other 6 constitutional officers. The legislators were all there. Big contingencies from Bethel and Brookfield at the inauguration. All 5 floors filled to the rails and then beyond. It was really a fabulous thing. I thought she hit a lot of good themes in her speech, and I think that it was only about 11 minutes long, but I think that it gets us off to a very good start for the next 4 years.
What was the mood in there?
I think on any opening day, I think there's, and especially an inauguration day, there's always a sense of this is one state, one government. We're in about that in about 48 hours you wouldn't even recognize the place. You've seen many an opening day in your time. It's such a very good feeling when you start a new term, but it's short-lived.
Well, when you have a governor who's a member of one party and then the House and the Senate's controlled by another, you would imagine that there's going to be a plea for bipartisanship.
But,
it's funny because
yeah.
you see the same thing happening on a national level right now.
Exactly.
With the new Speaker, Pelosi, coming in, the Democrats in charge, the White House held by Republicans. It's in everyone's best interest, I guess, at that point, to be very bipartisan, at least to express that on day one. We'll see what happens as they begin to try to piece together
It was
legislation.
described to me by one gentleman who was at the gala last night. He said the gala was kind of a who's who of the Republican Party in the business world. Well, the inauguration was a who's who of the Democratic Party in the legislature.
They always say the Democratic Party, as near as I could tell, was very well represented at the ball as well, but I understand what you're saying.
Not as high as they were at the inauguration, trust me. But there's always a lot of good feelings on opening day. I don't think you'd have anybody argue with that.
You said short-lived, right?
I would say that the arguing begins tomorrow if it didn't begin today already. What do
You
you
know
think,
what?
Paul?
Let's say this.
Maybe next Monday.
No, next Monday.
Let it start with us. I would like to say to the...
Let the games begin.
let it begin. I would like to say to the public, this is live. They can participate in the discussion. 792-4101. 792-4101. Let me say this. This is about...
Ringing already, I think.
No. This is about Jody Rell's priority for 2007. Okay, and okay, to me, I have a couple of questions for you because I'm looking at my paper here because she started talking about. I'm reading the Hartford Courant where she promised to guard the public trust. What is that about?
But, you know, I didn't hear her speech. I wasn't there. I've been kind of out of the loop for the last few days. But that's probably the most important theme she can touch on. Because Connecticut, in recent years, the electorate of Connecticut has been grossly disappointed by leaders in Hartford consistently. From John Rowland to Paul Sylvester to Mayor Giordano of Waterbury to Mayor Ganim in Bridgeport. Connecticut has had a recent reputation of abhorrent corruption. Jody Rell, her stunning victory was because people do believe that she's a decent and honorable woman. More than it was than any specific record she had to run on, people believe that she is honest and decent and a person who will not be corrupted by the possible spoils of power. That theme has worked for her over the last year and a half or 2 years, and it is an appropriate theme to start off her new term, her first term, and the new legislative session.
But don't you think that it was actually said indirectly with receiving the majority of the votes?
Sure.
Last year.
Absolutely. It was an overwhelming victory. But to start a new session, and hopefully one day, 4 years from now, you'll be able to go, because there is a palpable feeling of excitement and kind of a new beginning of government. And you know, even when it's a re-election of a governor, to start off on that theme was completely appropriate. You know, it's kind of a hard thing to describe. But there was an actual pall over the Capitol building for a long, long time. People were disgusted. And to start off with a new term, words mean things, and Jody Rell's word hopefully will stay true, and she will govern effectively and loyally and honestly for the next 4 years.
Do you share the same?
I think there's been kind of almost a proverbial walking on eggshells, for lack of a better term, over the last 2 years. And it's not just because of the governor's predecessor, it's because of the mayors of Waterbury and Bridgeport, State Senator Ernest Newton, who I believe was found guilty of accepting bribes. But there's been a proverbial walking on eggshells. You don't see, and I'm not saying that, I mean, it's almost like talking about guarding the public trust. Everybody's almost afraid to do anything that will even shun the appearance of not doing anything in the public trust. And I think that's the difference. I mean, in the gala, just we see it. I mean, the gala was held at the Connecticut Expo Center, which used to be a warehouse. It's now basically a convention center in Hartford. It used to be held in the State Armory with 7-course meals. I remember I went when I was 19 years old. The booze just kept flowing, and it's a lot. I was told by those who went 8 years ago and those who went this year it was different, but I think there's a lot of proverbial walking on eggshells in Hartford by all people.
Yeah, I think I agree with Paul that Jody Rell has come in and wants to reestablish confidence and trust in government, and I think she's done a wonderful job in doing that. I'm just thinking here. You know, I wonder if there's an analogy between what Gerald Ford did possibly after the Nixon administration. And
She
what we
didn't
have
pardon
here.
Roland.
Yeah, that might be the only thing that was different. But I think, yeah, there's a desire on the part of the voters to come back to a sense of decency in government, a sense of trust. I think she's come in, you know, actually as you look back at their relationship, Rell versus Roland, there was some conflict there. There was some animosity. I mean, she was the lieutenant governor, but it wasn't all sweetness and love leading up to that.
Not at all.
And so I think in the end, when she had to take over as governor, that sort of worked to her benefit because she wasn't looked at, hey, there was some deal, like, you know, someone said with the Ford administration. But yeah, I think Jody has done an incredible job on that, and I think it'll serve her well.
And you know, Ivan, to be honest, you know, I've been fully honest on this show. I didn't vote for the woman. I didn't think she had much of a record to run on. But that doesn't mean she's not a good person and an honest person. And I think that's part of why she won so overwhelmingly.
Yeah. Okay, we have a call.
Okay.
Caller, you're in the air. Thank you for calling.
I know I'm in there. I'm watching the show now. I just turned on the TV.
Yes, how you doing?
Hey, dude, good. Mad, chowder sucks.
I don't think you can say that on the air, sir.
Yeah, I know. This is me, David.
I know
You
that.
forgot.
All right, so why aren't you here?
I just got here.
Okay, cool. So looking forward to see you in 5 minutes, all right?
No, Ariel's gonna take care of it. I'm home now.
Okay, cool.
Charter rules.
Yeah, guys.
Thank you.
Charter rules.
And tell the guys that Happy New Year.
All right, happy New
New
Year
also,
to you
David.
too. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, Jody Rell, we saw her as a very sweet lady. Okay, she's 60 years old. She was in office for a couple of years, right? However, I'm beginning to sense that she is not going to be as sweet as we thought she was, because I'm reading her her speech, and let me read it to you here. She says, quote, "I will forcefully lend my voice, freely share my vision, and help to shape a Connecticut that is yet to be." Okay, let's dissect this sentence here. I will forcefully lend my voice. I think she was talking to the Democrats. You know why?
Why?
Because she knows that the Democrat has veto-proof majorities in both chambers.
That's true.
And I think she's telling them, look, I'm willing to fight here.
Well,
So,
what-
yeah,
what
I
do
mean,
you-
that-
Or
what
do
do
you
you-
roll over and say, run the state
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
figurehead?
Well, no, it's not that, because let me explain something. Just take the position. Take the positions first of all. Governor is a full-time chief elected official that is allowed to hire and fire hundreds of people that work in the state government. They're responsible for running the state on a day-to-day basis. That legislation is in session, what, 6 months out of the year, and then if they call it, get back into special session. I can't imagine this governor calling them back into special session. But so it's a part-time job. I mean, they go up there for 6 months, do their thing, 5 months, do their thing. She is there 24 hours a day, 365 days a week for the next 4 years. 365 days a year.
And she was voted in with an overwhelming majority of the vote. I mean, the percentage of the vote that she garnered this time can be, you know, said to be a somewhat of a mandate. She does have a voice. She's the governor of the state. Like Paul was saying, what did you expect her to say in her inaugural speech? Like, okay, you guys run the House, you guys run the Senate. I'm just gonna, you know, cut some ribbons here and be here for parades.
Power.
I understand.
the
They have
reality
a
is that-
veto-proof majority, which, you know, is going to. But she has a voice. We talked about this a little bit before. There is, in the way the government's set up, a separation of powers, checks and balances. She has a voice, she has a role to play. And I think what she's saying in that, in her opening speech, is that she intends to, have her voice be heard. I just want another thing she said. There were.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, she said another thing. She said there are many voices and many visions. A din of democracy, though sweet, is often deafening. I mean, she's saying that there's a public dialogue going on out there, and I intend to bring my positions and the positions of our party and some of the goals and achievements. They're talking about education, energy, healthcare, and so forth. And I don't read into that any dire threat shot across the bow or something along those lines. I think she's intending to play a role. She's speaking
It's
her
very
voice.
belligerent. I think that's right. So.
From a purely political perspective, it's brilliant to do, because she knows that the Democrat Party is not a cohesive family in Hartford. There are deep divisions within the caucus in the House and the Senate. Theoretically, yes, they control a veto-proof majority, but in reality, to cobble together that coalition is extraordinarily difficult.
So you don't think
and the
they can come
reality is
together
Jody
this
Rell
year?
is in a far stronger position than most people give her credit for, not only by virtue of her overwhelming victory, the divisions within the Democrat caucus, but also because she controls the media spotlight. The Speaker of the House calls a press conference. Who shows up? No one. No one at all.
With a camera, a remote. You're
Ivan-
doing remotes later, right?
Ivan with that, and
And Sebastian with his microphone.
maybe the echo from WestCon if he happens to be in Danbury. No one shows up. Jody Rell calls a press conference. Channel 3, Channel 8, Channel 6, they're
C-SPAN.
all there. C-SPAN, the News Times, the Hartford Courant, the New Haven Register. She controls the media spotlight, and by virtue of that, having that pulpit, that power to sway public opinion is enormously powerful.
I'll give you another example. The state Senate had a veto-proof majority last term. The State House did not. They were short by a few seats. Regardless, as a matter of symbolism, or any time they could in the past when they had that, they would try to override the veto. She vetoed, I believe, 7 bills last year. I could have the number wrong, but I believe it's about 7. You know how many times the Senate tried to override it? This many. They never even tried. Don Williams never brought it to the floor to try and override the governor's veto, even if the House wasn't going to do it anyway. He just wouldn't do it.
And why bother? Why attempt to override a veto of a woman who had a 70 to 80% approval rating?
You know what? That is not a mandate. Let me tell you why. I don't think it's a mandate because
63% of the vote is a mandate. From what I understand, it's the second largest landslide in recent
Only to
memory
John
after Abe
Rowland.
Ribicoff.
No, after John
theory,
Rowland.
In
He
theory,
got 62,
let's look
she
at
got
it this way,
63,
right?
she beat him.
No,
In
she didn't.
theory,
She did.
No, she didn't.
In theory, listen.
She did.
You're
listen.
wrong.
Ivan, you got to get
Ivan,
control of
please,
this.
go ahead.
In theory,
Yes.
okay, Jody Rell did great, but the Republican Party as a whole
Connecticut's a Democrat
did
state.
not do well at all.
Well, first of all, they didn't
But
even
what is it
contest
about
so many
Jody Rell
races.
that she got the majority of the
Because
votes.
she's a liberal. And a good many,
Are you
moderate-
Don't use that word.
Are you
Don't
saying-
use that nasty word. Don't use that nasty word.
voters supported Jody Rell.
Oh.
Jody Rell's support amongst the Republicans is strong, but it's strong with a there's a slightly tepid response amongst hardcore conservative Republicans towards her governing style and
So are you
philosophy.
saying
No,
that the
there is not.
Republicans in
Yes,
the
there is.
state
There is
are
not.
Well, maybe
No,
not in
there's
her
not. There's not.
hometown, but throughout the rest of Connecticut, people like her.
First
but
of all, I don't-
activists don't necessarily love her.
I don't
There's a
think
love-hate
it's by the
relationship, just like the
governor.
Democrats also have a love-hate relationship with Joe Lieberman. Most Democrats like him, but they don't love him, as
Well,
evidenced by the fact that they wouldn't renominate him for re-election.
I don't think many people would call the governor
Well,
liberal. That's the first thing.
That's fine. Jody Rell governs the state of Connecticut as a moderate.
That's
There's
fine.
nothing wrong with that.
she a
Connecticut,
liberal?
Connecticut is a moderate state. From my perspective, she is.
No,
From my perspective, she is.
she is not. She never has been. She never will be.
I'm sharing my perspective.
Why are you so afraid of this liberal
You know,
term?
Because I don't think it's-
All right,
because I don't
Illinois,
think it
bad
applies
term.
at
How
all.
many
I don't
how many
think it applies at all.
conservative governors have increased the gas tax on the 1st of July, in recent memory, when we have the highest gas prices in the history of the country?
Given that situation, Tom Meskel did it. Tom Meskel
Okay,
did it.
and Tom Meskel was a liberal. They threw him out. The fact of the matter
I
is,
think you just
Jody
proved your point.
Jody Rell is not a conservative Republican. She never has been, which makes her acceptable to a very large segment of Connecticut's electorate. Independent voters, or unaffiliated voters, which are the plurality, and Democrat voters, which, combined make up a huge percentage of the population.
I would call the governor a moderate conservative. I really would.
I'd call
because
her a moderate
what
liberal.
I would
We'll-
call
we'll
I would
disagree.
call
What would
her
you
a
call
moderate conservative because that was her voting record when she was in the House. That was her record as lieutenant governor. She has had an excellent record.
as lieutenant governor.
She liberal Republican is a very poor term because a moderate Republican would be Chris Shays. He's got a maverick streak in the Congress. He's got a voting record that reflects that of a moderate. Jody does not have a record that's that of a moderate.
You think I'm saying this, as an epithet. I'm a moderate to liberal, or was a moderate to liberal Republican.
I don't think you know what you are, and I don't think anyone else that watches this show does.
Well, then that's their problem. But in modern day politics, a liberal Republican or a moderate to liberal Republican is someone who is fiscally conservative, yet socially liberal to libertarian, which is where I fall in. And I do
Let me suggest something else too. Along, I mean, we can split hairs here. What pigeonhole you want to put her in, liberal, Democrat, what have you. I think as a person, she's a very likable, appealing person.
She is.
And I think, if the person ever met the opportunity in this state over the last 2 years or so, it was Jody Rell. The person, she was created for this time in this place, and she rose to the occasion. The state was in disarray. We were looking for leadership. We were looking for someone to help lead us out of this difficult situation we found her with. She rose to the occasion. She's performed brilliantly, and I think that's reflected in the votes she gets, and I think that's why she's going to continue to have very strong support in the state. Liberal, conservative, I'd be hard-pressed to kind of pigeonhole her, as I would be hard-pressed to pigeonhole Chris Shays or something like that. I agree with them. I voted for both of them. Do I agree with them on every single issue, social, fiscal, or otherwise? No. But in both cases, they're intelligent, conscientious, and very appealing people, and I think they do a good job. And they represent
I'll
the
extend
people.
your point, and I'll extend your point a little bit further. You talked about the veto-proof majority.
Right.
Jody Rell, we've got a veto-proof majority in both houses of the legislature right now, and you're saying that might be used as a bargaining chip to either block some for legislation or pass some of their own. Well, I'm going to go next door to New York State for a second, where they just went off 12 years of a Republican governor who I would classify more as a moderate, maybe even a liberal Republican governor. But I mean, let's look at what Eliot Spitzer has, the same that George Pataki has. 59% of the seats in the Senate are Republican. About 62% of the seats in the state House over there are Democrat. So we've got one House of each. Let me tell you something. They overrode George Pataki's veto about 47 times in 12 years. So the veto-proof majority, it's almost irrespective of parties, especially when you look at how divided the House Democratic caucus is.
Since we seem to be very divided here in terms of what she is, a liberal or
Well, beyond that,
moderate
we
or
all
a conservative.
respect her and like her as a person.
Yeah, but
And I think there is a
very important
consensus
for
that
us
she
to
is
know.
not a conservative.
There is not a consensus of that. I believe she is a moderate conservative.
Well, let's
let's
say this.
Moderate conservative.
Right here tonight, we seem to disagree on that. So let's transition to, based on what you think she is, to how she's going to address the issues she spoke on during her speech. For example, she said deep-seated problems confronting us in education, energy, healthcare, taxation, and job. And also, we know that they are also going to address the issue of gay marriage. Now, whether you think she's a liberal, a conservative, or a moderate, how do you think that she is going to address these issues, and how do you think she's going to work together in a conjunction with the Democrats to give a very reasonable and fair bills to actually confront these issues?
Well, I can take a couple of these. On energy, it's funny when you talk about the price of gas at the pumps, and you have politicians or leaders that are really wringing their hands and saying, oh, it's awful, gas is so high, gas is so high. When you really look at it, a majority of the money that you're spending on gas, I just saw on the news tonight, a barrel of oil is down below $55 a barrel now, so the price is coming down. A lot has to do with the warm weather we've been having this winter as well. It's all supply and demand. But the energy costs, such a large majority of that is spent on taxation, the taxes that are tied to the gasoline. I think you mentioned Connecticut has the highest taxes on gasoline of any state in the union. So I think that Jody Rell and the Republicans are going to introduce legislations to try to reduce some of those taxes on gasoline. And that's what John Fries mentioned in his article in the paper, and I think that's one way that she's trying to do it. I read her speech. I wasn't there. It seemed to be a little light on specifics. It's a very short speech.
Very much so.
We want to bridge a gap. We want to bring things together. We're going to do some stuff. Very light on specifics, and the devil's always in the details. But I think on the energy level, they're going to at least try to propose some legislation to cut taxes, state taxes.
Can
on
I ask the
gasoline.
Board of Finance Chairman something then?
Go ahead.
I think one of the things you probably hear about Marty all the time, every year, usually probably around the springtime, is property taxes and everything.
Yes.
And one of the first bills she talks about introducing is the one that failed last year, to eliminate the personal property tax on cars.
Yeah.
Where do you stand?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, there's certain taxes that affect. One, I think, is the gasoline tax. The other is the property tax on cars. I think it's a great idea to abandon that. First of all, for the towns, it's very hard to collect those various taxes. It's very difficult. It's arduous. Real estate taxes are somewhat easier to collect, but I would be very much in favor of just absolutely eradicating the tax.
It came up on another show with the two of us, so we've made our points on it.
I'm in favor of it. I don't know. I may be in a minority.
Do you have faith that money that Ridgefield will lose will be recouped from the state? Will Ridgefield be
that's the
further
outline.
shortchanged than they are now? Will more of those dollars go to Bridgeport and Waterbury, New London, and put the people of Ridgefield at a detriment? Unfortunately, I think it will. And it will not only be a disservice to the people of Ridgefield and Bethel and Brookfield and every so-called wealthy town in Connecticut, and Bethel and Brookfield are certainly not as wealthy as Ridgefield, but or Bethel and Brookfield. Unfortunately, every time we hear of property tax reform, the benefits are to those people in the inner cities. There comes a point where the people of Ridgefield and Bethel and other towns have to stand up and say, why? What is wrong with us?
Yeah. I mean, what I'm looking at is for the individual taxpayer, they're not going to have to pay that.
I would love to not pay taxes on my car.
Okay.
Absolutely, I would love it.
Right.
But does that do a long-term disservice to the people of Bethel? I think it probably will, judging by Connecticut's history. The people of Waterbury and New Haven. Well, I don't live in Waterbury or New Haven. I live in Bethel. Well, I'm a selfish person, Ivan. There is no benefit to me. And at the end of the day, you know, it's not my fault Waterbury and Hartford are not doing all that well. The people in the town of Bethel generally do pretty well. Why should I continually have to give more money to subsidize another community? Connecticut does that. You know, Ridgefield is a donor town in every single way. They're a donor town to other towns in Connecticut, and Connecticut is a donor state to places like Mississippi or wherever. At the end of the day, there's a limit, and I think by repealing the car tax in its current form is just, it's a detriment to the towns in this area.
So you're saying the individual taxpayer in some of these towns you mentioned will see their taxes go down because they're not paying these taxes?
Absolutely.
Okay, but you're saying the town
Ridgefield
is going to lose out because we're not going to get the money back from the
Let's just
state.
say, for the heck of it, Ridgefield spends $100 million a year, and 20 of that comes from car taxes. Just even numbers here. I know those are off.
Yeah.
Where are you getting that $20 or $20 million from? Is the state just going to say, we're going to collect more money somewhere and then give Ridgefield $20 million so it's a wash?
Yeah,
Or are you going to have to increase your mill rate on homes to an extent where you have to go ahead and recoup that $20 million anyway?